Let's start with some audience participation. Raise your hand if any of the following apply to you. Does the thought of speaking about yourself in public make you queasy? Have you never been able to tackle your fear of heights or drowning? Anyone feel like you could never run 5 miles without stopping? I see a lot of virtual hands. What if I told all of you that with just a few steps, you could take on that fear? Would you do it? Law is a risk-averse occupation. Sometimes it's difficult to get out of our legal and personal comfort zones. We see red flags and barriers. In fact, we are trained to see those things to protect our clients. But in risk, there is also reward. Calculated risks can help us see outside the box, be innovative, and more flexible to change. And in today's world, the only constant is change. Especially when the companies we work for become more and more innovative. And our legal minds, really any minds, are trained to help find clarity in a world of gray. With some intentional practice, we can open ourselves to unique experiences that make it easier to face challenges and grow. So my proposal to you is this. Do one thing a year that scares the heck out of you. It will make you a more well-rounded person and allow you to be more open to risk, challenge, and change. I am someone who lives in the comfort zone. My work schedule is intensely regimented. I have daily routines that I stick closely to. Very early in my career, I was threatened by changes big and small, in work or in life. Even things like picking dinner would put me in a loop. But I noticed others in my life, including my husband, were much easier going when it came to change. I didn't want to constantly be in fear of the next governmental regulation that upended a program, or when an employee chose to leave the organization. And so, a few years ago, I added a new goal to my life for every year, much like people set New Year's resolutions. Once a year, do something that scares the heck out of me. I started in 2011 with a lot of smaller scenarios to help ease myself into the process. It was the summer after my first year of law school, and I signed up for a study abroad program in Pisa, Italy, with a backpacking trip to follow. During that trip, I checked off a laundry list of things that, if you knew me, would never imagine me doing. I stayed alone on a stranger's living room couch in Sweden. I hitchhiked with my now husband in Armenia, where most locals knew less than 10 words of English. In 2012, I picked something that I physically did not think I could tackle, a half marathon. Now, for some of you, that may not seem like a big deal, but me? You're talking about a girl who hadn't run more than a half mile since high school gym class, when they test you on your mile run speed. So I trained regularly with my friend, who also ran regularly. Started off working up to a 5K, and a 10K, and then up to a half marathon. 2 weeks before the half, I ran what was supposed to be my last long run of training, and I almost tore my IT band on both legs. I nursed them back to health, took a break, and 2 weeks later, I successfully finished the half. I had knee braces, and it took about 5 minutes of flight of stairs for the next couple of weeks, but I conquered my fear. I can also share that since, I've completed 2 more half marathons and a 13-mile Tough Mudder. In 2013, I moved on to true guttural fears. The one at the top of my list, drowning. I had a near-drowning incident as a child, so I'm not a strong swimmer and was obviously terrified. In being true to my philosophy, I knew this had to be the fear I tackled. I signed up for scuba certification classes, successfully completed the course near several hyperventilation moments. I may still get really nervous before I scuba dive, but I would have never been able to see the ocean the way I have, or even come close to reef sharks or entire schools of fish. When I scuba dove, I even got to hug a sea lion. Moving into work, I felt massive imposter syndrome in a new category I supported in contracting. It was an area we had never strategically tackled before. To say I was scared of failure and reputational demise was an understatement. But along with the team, I took charge, initiative, and bold steps in an area where others hadn't. And the team together implemented a $22 million savings to the organization with that single initiative. That has reinforced me to think outside the box, ask if we can look at things differently, adjust the sails and explore the horizon, rather than the complacency of the previous 5 years of strategy. However, these are not without consequence, and not everything you try will end up being a success. For example, in Nepal, I decided to be brave and try yak's cheese. I definitely paid for that with what I will call an unintentional 48-hour cleanse. But these challenges not only make me a more well-rounded person, with some extra hobbies and superlatives to list, it also makes me more open to challenges because I've tackled things with my own internal motivations and know that if I can do this, I can definitely translate that energy into the next thing that comes my way. So, how do you go about starting this philosophy? We'll start with a plan. I'll list them out and then we'll break each one down. First, identify your fear or a scenario where you're not confident. Identify an activity, project, or experience available to you related to that fear. Identify what you have control over. Identify what you can do to gain control over other factors. Plan, practice, prepare, and do it. Let's break this down. First, identify your fear or a scenario where you're not confident. Start with a list of things you have a fear of or where you lack confidence. It could be heights, public speaking, being the lead in a project. Then narrow it down to a couple you actually want to tackle. Next, identify an activity, project, or experience available related to that fear. For those 1 or 2 left on your list, think about something you could do in your life related to that fear. For example, if you're afraid of heights, could you hike the tallest mountain in your state? For public speaking, could you make a planned speech at your company's annual meeting, or successfully complete a year of Toastmasters in a local chapter? Could you volunteer to take on the next challenging project at work? Doing this should hopefully help you narrow down to that one activity or experience you'd want to tackle. Now, I'm just going to call an audible on this step. Be honest about what really is a challenge for you. This is meant to be hard, but not impossible. If you have a serious leg injury, maybe running a marathon is not realistic for you. If you get serious altitude sickness, maybe climbing Mount Whitney also isn't right. But don't shortchange yourself. If it's something you could tackle in one day with no planning, maybe you need to think about something else that will be more of a challenge. But also don't try to tackle something that you can't or won't devote time to. Remember, this is meant to help you grow. Next, identify what you have control over. Once you have your challenge, take a moment to understand what you can control, what's in your power to do. You have control, at least to some degree, over your schedule to take time to practice or attend lessons. You can control when you sign up for the event, build in time blocks, find a coach or mentor. You can get yourself a new pair of running shoes, ask your boss for the assignment. Next, identify what you can do to gain control over other factors. Conversely, write down things that you may not be able to control in your challenge. For example, you can't control weather on the day of the event or your half marathon, but you can sign up for a time of year when the weather tends to be better. You can practice running in different conditions. Wear appropriate clothes to adapt. This is also where you can weed out any ideas that are just impractical. If you really wanted to be a singer in the local choir, but they aren't taking any new auditions this year or they aren't active due to COVID, maybe consider another goal along those lines, or move that to another time when you have more control over your ability to achieve that goal. If your work travel schedule is so taxing that you could not train appropriately for the triathlon, or you couldn't make the Toastmasters meetings, maybe revisit when and what you could accomplish instead. Next, plan, practice, prepare. Now that you know what you want to do and you know how you want to approach it, this is the time to plan, prepare, and practice to set yourself up for a successful challenge. Words of advice: don't be reckless. Saying you want to face your fear of heights by jumping out of an airplane with no parachute is not what I'm getting at here. Just as in law, you also don't expect a Hail Mary pass at a challenging interrogatory response will help you always be successful. You need to plan, prepare, set yourself up for success. For example, I didn't run my half marathon by just signing up and showing up. I consulted others who had already run half marathons. I developed a training plan. I took a step back and rested when I had pushed myself too far in training. Planning and seeking out expert advice helps you identify the tools in your tool belt so you can prepare yourself for the next time a challenge comes along. You might need to pivot too, and that's okay. If you face a setback like a sprained ankle or a family emergency, identify what you can do to course correct or refocus on your goal. And last, do it. Now's the chance to put the wheels in motion and tackle your challenge. A few ground rules to help as you use the plan. Number 1, don't be arrogant. You can definitely reinforce with mantras like, I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. But don't let it become a situation where I will succeed where others fail. This is about improving yourself, not comparing, lowering, or distancing others. 2, give yourself grace. Not everything you tackle will be a home run. In fact, you may actually fail at something you try at. But here's a quote I saw the other day that really hits home for this. You can spend forever standing at the foot of a diving board, and you will always find a reason not to go in. It's too high, it might hurt, you might swallow water. And all of those things are true. But you know what else is? You waste a perfectly good life standing on the edge. Recognize that failure is important for growth. It's important to learn and become more successful with everything you do. And 3, use a support system. It may be your spouse, your coworker, your best friend, even your social network. Make your goal known. Talk about your progress, your challenges, your wins. They can also help hold you accountable when you've fallen behind or are facing a roadblock. Now, you might be wondering, why does this strategy need to come from within me? Why can't I just grow from my next work assignment or the next time someone else asks me to do something? It's because if we push ourselves rather than being forced from the outside world, we tend to look at things more favorably. By pushing yourself, it does 2 things. 1, it structures it in a way that you're more likely to do it. And 2, you come out of it with a more positive perspective, regardless of the outcome. My practice has evidence within the psychology community. It's a concept called locus of control. Basically, there are 2 perspectives, an internal and an external locus of control. Internal locus of control is where people assume a personal responsibility and influence over what happens to them. Think, I control my own destiny. External locus of control is when people believe that forces or powers outside or beyond themselves are largely in control of their future and environment. Think, what happens in my life is because of fate or luck. When people with an internal locus of control face a new and unpredictable situation, they trust their ability to influence that situation, which makes the unknown less threatening. It reinforces your ability to be self-reliant and helps you cope with stressful and uncertain situations. Research has linked internal locus of control to independent decision-making and active coping strategies, such as information seeking. This is important in work and in life, because if you actively work to understand a challenging situation, you are more likely to discover solutions and options, while also reducing feelings of insecurity. If you have an internal locus of control, you would take responsibility for your poor performance. Yeah, maybe your latest work presentation wasn't the best. You didn't get all the information you needed. But you take responsibility for this and resolve to do better next time. You might do this by understanding your audience, by chasing people for information or feedback earlier. If you have an external locus of control otherwise, you would instead blame others for not giving you timely input, or that the internet connection was poor. In that situation, you're not growing, and the mistake will likely happen again because you're not addressing your own challenges. Think about even using this in your personal life in relation to other things, not just this big scary challenge we're talking about. Think about how you could use a strategy for your life in COVID-19. There are a lot of unknowns about variants, resuming whatever normal life, normal travel is. that if you understand what you can control and plan accordingly, it can make the future less daunting. For example, being clear on how you choose to social distance, vaccinations or testing, masking, disinfectants. It can help you embrace a narrative of internal locus of control that will make the situation even more manageable, even amidst uncertainty. And that's the whole point of this philosophy. Challenging yourself and taking control of things you wouldn't have otherwise done will make it easier for you to take things on, regardless of whether or not you have control over them. So, what's your half marathon? What's your next big career move? What skills did you not even know you had, or passions that you've kept in the dark for far too long? What's that thing you've always wanted to do, but are too afraid to take the plunge? With a little planning, a little pushing, and a positive attitude, you too can tackle your fears and become a more well-rounded and prepared person. You might even just have a little fun while doing it.